Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Pam Lanham. I'm co-owner and editor of the Hinsdalean. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Jim Slonoff on camera, also co-owner and publisher, and Ken Knudsen, who will be keeping time for us this evening, associate editor to Jim's right, depending on where you're sitting. I also want to thank our candidates for being here for all three races tonight. This is an event we always look forward to hosting, and also to the community house with whom we are partners, and through that partnership they provided this space for us this evening. Now I'd like to introduce Ben Bradlee. Ben is an Emmy award-winning investigative reporter who joined Chicago's very own WGN Investigates team in January 2017. He currently co-anchors the WGN Evening News from 4 to 5 p.m. Prior to WGN, Ben spent 14 years at WLS-TV ABC7 in Chicago as a reporter and weekend morning anchor. He's traveled the globe to work on various stories, reporting from China, Brazil, the Caribbean, and nearly a dozen states. He also worked at CLTV and its stations in Columbia, Missouri, and Charleston, South Carolina. In recent years, his work has been recognized with 5 Emmy Awards for breaking news coverage, as well as 2 Illinois Broadcasters Association Silver Dome Awards for investigative reporting and a documentary on the legacy of former Mayor Richard M. Daley. He's a member of the Investigative Reporters and Editors Association and past president of the Chicago Headline Club. Born and raised in the south suburbs, he attended Homewood Flossmoor High School, go Vikings, I was there too for a bit, and earned his bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri at Columbia. He and his wife Molly have 3 sons and also live right here in town. We're lucky to have Ben as a resident, a member of the Hinsdalean's Reader Advisory Board, and serving as tonight's moderator. So please join me in welcoming Ben Bradlee.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you to you guys for having me. I always joke with my wife that there's my TV life and my real life, and I keep them very separate, so it's weird to have like the formal introduction in Hinsdale, especially for those of you who see me unshowered and messy at Starbucks downtown. I've got a couple rules and then we'll get right to it. Each candidate's going to have the opportunity to make a 1-minute opening statement, then I'll ask the same 5 questions of all candidates. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. If there's time left, then I get to ask some questions. Those questions will likely come from you all in the audience. Candidates, please pay attention to Ken, who will have time markers in front. Questions were submitted in advance by readers of the Hinsdalean. They were written by its staff. Priority was given to those questions believed to be of the greatest general interest. People who would like to submit questions tonight, it's easy. There are index cards. Feel free to fill those out. Raise up your hand when that's finished, and Pam, Jim, or Ken will grab those from you. They'll get handed up to me. We'll sift through them. I assure you there is no conspiracy. We just try to choose the questions that we think are of greatest interest and most significance to our specific races. The order of the races, just for those of you who have planned a full rocking date night here, we want you to know this is not the only show going on here at the Community House. After the Village Board, we will have the candidates for the D181 School Board come. That'll be run from about 7:48 to 8:36. Then the D86 Board about 8:41. And with a little luck by 9:45, we'll all be cocktailing. We'll take a couple minute break in between those races. My quick plug for the Hinsdalean, and as a journalist, I can tell you that the people on TV, the people at the networks, the people, they get paid the most, they get the most quote-unquote recognition, but it is the community papers and the communities that support those papers that are so vital to the well-being of the most important place around, and that's the place where we all live. So shout out to the Hinsdalean as well. You guys ready? All righty. We've got 4 candidates competing for 3 spots on the Hinsdale Village Board. There'll be music. When it finishes, whoever doesn't have a seat does not get on the board. So we've just made this easy. We're going to have opening statements. Let's start with Scott Banke.
It's awesome going first. So my name is Scott Banke. I'm running for Hinsdale Village Trustee. My wife and I will be celebrating two anniversaries next year. First will be our 30th wedding anniversary, and the second will be our 30th anniversary of being a homeowner in this town. We've raised two sons here, and I've had multiple opportunities to serve in a multiplicity of capacities, raising money for the different schools, being involved with various village activities, and holding office where I was a village trustee for about 6 months. Village finance is one of the biggest aspects of our village. 10 years ago, many of us will remember that the village was in a lot of trouble. Since that time, we've had an opportunity to right that ship. As a candidate, I promise that those types of results are what our community like ours expects. That's what I'm going to work towards. That's what you'll be voting for. And I hope on April 2, you'll vote for number 2.
Good evening. My name is Bill.
You're on. You're good.
Good evening. My name is Bill Cotter. My wife Samara and I moved to this community in 2012, recognizing it to be a wonderful place to raise a family that we hope to start. We were fortunate enough to welcome 3 children in the years that followed, one of whom is here tonight, and the other 2, our twin boys, are at home sleeping, I hope. In the years that followed, I looked around town and started to question, based on some of the things that I saw, whether or not the decision that we made to locate here, to raise our family here, was the right one. Recurrences of animosity and fighting between the village board and other units of local government, instances of threats to our public safety, such as high-profile criminal instances, as well as environmental threats like those posed by Sterigenics. I have a diverse and unique professional skill set that will be a tremendous asset to this town and the board that governs it. When you go to vote, consider my background and the professional skills that I'll bring to serve you. Vote number 1 and be done when you go to vote. Thank you.
My name is Laurel, and I'm running for the position of trustee of the Village of Hinsdale. I had the great fortune to grow up in Hinsdale during the 70s and 80s. 16 years ago, my husband and I chose to move from Chicago to Hinsdale to raise our own family. The village board at that time was ineffective in maintaining our infrastructure and floated ill-conceived development ideas, such as moving the middle school into one of our parks. 10 years ago, I and other Hinsdale residents voted for a new board and a new direction. In the last decade, 80% of the sewers and roads have been rebuilt, and downtown vacancy has gone from almost 20% to today's 4%. The coming parking deck will alleviate parking pressure, and the village staff continues to do an outstanding job of recruiting a range of businesses to our charming historic downtown. To close, I will leave you with the planks of our platform, which include 1, smart development, 2, fiscal responsibility and infrastructure investment, 3, public safety, 4, preserving home values. I am running to continue our progress of the past decade and to help keep the village on track.
I have served as trustee since 2015. During that time, I've continued rebuilding our roads. As of today, 80% have been resurfaced. By 2021, 100% of our roads will be repaved. As chairperson of Zoning and Public Safety, I have led the approval for development of the Hinsdale Meadows and the Amlings property, all of which will create more tax revenue for our village and our schools. Economic activity in our village is thriving. Downtown vacancy rates are less than 4%, with a waiting list for tenants to move in. I was the village point person for Sterigenics. I sponsored a resolution to join the lawsuit, and I stood at the Dirksen Federal Building with U.S. Congressman Lipinski and other elected officials demanding the facility be closed. 1 week later, Sterigenics was shut down. Over the next 4 years, my goals will be 1, elimination of meters and pay boxes in the downtown. Parking should be free in our village for up to a maximum of 2 hours. An aggressive fight against the tollway authority as it seeks to impinge upon our village's quality of life and our #1 sales tax source, the Oasis. And lastly, enforcement of our zoning code, which will protect our schools from overcrowding.
Thank you to our candidates. Let's get right to the questions. Each candidate will be given the same question. We'll change the order each time so everybody gets a shot at going first and last. First question, how would you evaluate the condition of the village over the past 10 years? We'll start with Bill Cotter.
Well, Ben, having lived here since 2012, I have that perspective to bring to bear. The improvement of the roads and the construction undertaking, including right in front of my house a couple of years ago, is certainly a marked improvement from the condition that I found it in when I arrived here. Now, with some of the projects impacting the village, both with the parking deck in downtown, which the estimated cost of which is more than doubled since it was first introduced 2 years ago, with the expansion of 294 poised in the coming years to have an adverse impact on the village, there's plenty of cause for concern. And while I cannot speak to the financial condition that existed 10 years ago, I do believe there's cause for alarm right now based on some of the emerging conditions. And there's a lot that I can do about that.
Laurel?
I think the condition of the village in the last 10 years is vastly improved. As I mentioned in my opening, 10 years ago was a low point for our village, and we have continued to make changes and improve the situation since 2009, really, in that election. Our roads are in a vastly improved state thanks to the Master Infrastructure Plan, which is 80% complete at this point. And that plan is addressing not only roads, but the sewer system underneath. So our sewer system, which had been combined up until 2009, meaning sanitary and storm were together, they're now separate, which is compliant with the law. We also have much better finances. We have our municipal pension fund is nearly funded to 90%. The police and fire are at lower levels, but we need to continue to work on those. But relative to other communities, they're in the 65 and 85% range, and that's good relative to other communities. So there's still work to do, but we're making progress slowly and steadily, and we just need to continue, keep our nose to the grindstone and continue in that vein.
Luke?
Our village is night and day versus 10 years ago. We were on negative outlook by 2 credit rating agencies. We are now AAA stable. Our fund balances are greater than 26%, which is the top criteria for these rating agencies for us to hold that AAA rating. I would like to address candidate Cotter's point about the parking deck. One of the reasons the cost of the parking deck has increased is because we've increased the number of spaces by 30 to 40%. This is a direct result of our businesses in the downtown area wanting a larger parking deck. So it's important to understand the details of this. Secondly, as I said in my opening statements, our village is thriving. Vacancy rates are at a record low. Food and beverage tax right now is up 8% versus the same time last year. That's unheard of in a historic village such as this. And that's with no new restaurants opening up. One thing I think that we do need to address is public safety. Last year, there were 15 motor vehicles that were stolen in the Village of Hinsdale. Of those 15 vehicles, they were all stolen, all of them, 100%, were taken from driveways where key fobs were left in the cars overnight. We had one circumstance where a guy had his car stolen twice for the same reason. Our police department is doing a fantastic job. They've done outreaches directly to citizens. They're writing articles in the Hinsdalean to inform them. They are also reaching out on social media to solve this. So public safety, as I'm the chair of the Public Safety and Zoning Commission, it's one of the things I want to focus on and hope they'll get some time to expand on that. Thank you.
Scott?
So to build on what Luke was talking about, the development of the village from a business development standpoint has been nothing but unprecedented. I've lived here a long time, and I remember times when going to town and seeing all these vacant stores, and I was part of a project where we tried to save the Hinsdale Theater as an example. Those were the types of projects which we were trying to figure out before 10 years ago. Within this time frame of 10 years, just as Luke has mentioned, at one time we were on credit watch. We've since then reestablished our AAA rating. We were in a situation 10 years ago where we were arguably overstaffed. It was putting us into a questionable situation with regard to how we were going to continue to afford that staff and also be able to support those pensions which went along with that staffing. That has been addressed. We're currently installing a new enterprise system so that all of the different things that you can do in terms of like something is almost as annoying as like paying a parking ticket or getting an update on your building permit will now be online. So it'll be something where you'll have a portal to go to. These are unprecedented developments, and it's a story that this village is telling that a lot of other villages are not telling. And I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud to live here, and I look forward to being a part of continuing that progress.
Just a point of clarification, I think my family and I deserve significant credit for contributing to the food and beverage increase here in Hinsdale. Let's go to question 2. What do you think is the most pressing issue the village will face in the next 10 years? Laurel, we'll start with you, and I'll just remind all candidates, get your mouths nice and close to that microphone so we can all hear you.
I think the village has to work in a concerted way to maintain the vibrancy of downtown, which is a huge attraction to new people coming to the community. It's a very transparent measure of just how exciting this is as a place to live, as a place to visit, as a place to invite your friends and family to come. The village currently has a staff person who is tasked with economic development, and she works on building relationships with all of the businesses in town, not only those who are members of the chamber, but also those who choose not to be members of the chamber. And the village engages the entire community on a regular basis, asking for their opinions, getting feedback, and bringing them together so that they have a forum in which to talk to each other. Additionally, she works on maintaining a mix of businesses so that we have a really great selection of restaurants, a great selection of retail. It is an effort that bears the attention of the staff person and needs to be cultivated going forward so that the village can maintain the status and the atmosphere that has developed. Thank you.
Luke?
Biggest challenges over the next 10 years, one is going to be finances. First of all, Tollway Authority, the Oasis, we lose about $500,000 a year in sales tax revenue. Also, if there's a recession, we will see our permit revenue and our sale of food and beverage tax decrease in our sales tax revenue. We've got to be well positioned. Right now, we are with over a 26% funded cash ratio. And then also, we need to continue to be diligent. Right now, we're just roughly between $19 to $20 million unfunded on our police and fire pension fund. According to state laws, that has to be fully funded by the year 2040. We're on track to meet that, but we cannot let off the gas on that. Number 2, I would say, is public safety. As I mentioned before with the Automobile Fest, we're also seeing a change in crime in Hinsdale. We're getting a lot of, I'll call them kids, that are coming from the south and the west side of Chicago, going to very lucrative areas and robbing. This is a matter of public safety. Part of the reason that this is being driven is because the laws in Cook County, if you commit a felony for robbery, they will not hold you in jail and they will not prosecute you to the full extent of the law. Our police department is going further. We're going to the state's attorney office, and people that we arrest are being prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We have 3 people in jail right now being held for trial. All 3 of them are like us, said, we didn't know we could be prosecuted here for this. And they've also said the message is getting out that if you go to Hinsdale, you will be prosecuted and you will go to jail.
Scott?
I think one of the biggest pressing issues that we're going to have over the next 10 years is going to be the preservation of our historic village. I think that right now, our village, to a degree, is potentially under attack. We have individuals who have a mindset of doing various development activities which could saturate our town and create a situation where we ultimately not only have continuation of our parking problems, but also puts us in a situation where we have schools that then become more crowded and subsequently put us back in a situation right where we're at right now with having to do referendums in order to adjust for that. In the event that this happens, the character of this town will be changed forever. And therefore, I think we have to make a concerted effort with what we do today to preserve what we have for tomorrow.
Bill?
Thanks, Ben. I think the greatest threat in my mind really are the broader demographic trends from which Hinsdale suffers that oftentimes are not within our control. What I mean by that more specifically is on the state level, we're looking in the coming years at likely income tax increase. Increasingly, younger people, families like mine, are choosing to continue to live in Chicago versus moving as their families grow older to communities like Hinsdale. And that's to say nothing of the competition that towns like Hinsdale face from other towns, particularly towns that have had success in the past, passing referendums, appropriately funding schools, and building up the types of facilities that attract young families like mine to communities like those. Now, I'm hoping for good news on April 2nd on the referendum front, and I plan, along with my wife, to vote yes for it. That's a great step in the right direction. And that'll hopefully position us most strongly against other towns, or in competition with other towns, to attract families to this community that would continue to make it strong and carry it forward into the next generation, like I'm trying to do with my family.
Thank you. Let's go to our third question. How should the proposed parking deck at HMS be used as part of the village's parking strategy? We'll start with Luke.
Well, that's a good question, since I've already said one of my planks is to have free parking in the downtown. This is a sensitive issue, and it's one that we're going to have to address with some actual results once we implement it. But right now, consultants that work for the village have said that 1 out of every 4 parking spots, we have 383 parking spots within the village, 1 out of every 4 is utilized by an employee or merchant. That means if we can get rid of them and put them in the parking deck, it's going to free up 1 out of every 4 spaces in our village. I believe then that we should have free parking, and with the use of technology, primarily license plate readers where we walk around every hour, every resident should have up to 2 hours of free parking. If you get a ticket after 2 hours, the ticket shouldn't be $5 anymore. It should be progressive. First time a warning, second time $10, and then an increased scale so that the repeat offenders make it monetarily just prohibited to park there any longer. Now, is it 2 hours? Is it 90 minutes? Is it 3 hours? We have to see the results. But what I think that'll do is it'll bring more people to Hinsdale to dine. We'll see an increase in our sales tax revenue, and residents won't have the hassle of having to feed the meter any longer. More so for the village, we don't have to spend the money on parking meters or going to electronic tolls. This is a problem I think that can be solved within a reasonable time frame and a little bit of experience.
I would just ask the candidates when you're not speaking to turn off your mic so we don't get that. All right, no worries.
That's the problem.
Scott, go ahead.
So I think you're going to have a lot of repetition here. So with regard to the parking deck, the utilization really needs to focus on encouraging the businesses to have prioritization for their employees for that purpose. As we move forward and we gain a greater understanding of that utilization, that will also provide potentially an opportunity for commuter parking. As Luke had highlighted, I am also an advocate for free parking within the village itself. But what is going to have to go along with free parking is an opportunity to be able to monitor it so that we ensure that there is not abuses and that those employees are parking in the parking deck instead of those spots in front of our stores. We also should implement a potential program, I hope, so that we can encourage in some capacity that those employees will gravitate towards the parking garage instead of utilizing the spots and then potentially putting them in a situation that becomes confrontational with the village. Overall, I think this is an enormous win for this village. It was actually one of the first things when I had an opportunity to be an interim trustee that I had an opportunity to vote on. I said then that this was an absolute no-brainer. I still feel the same way, and I'm very excited for the progress that they're about to endeavor upon, and I look forward to the outcome.
Bill?
Thank you, Ben. A couple points on this. One, I think in 2019, it's important and inexcusable that we would not move towards smartphone-based apps to control parking and away from having to feed meters. That's really a no-brainer to me. Second, on the parking garage generally, I have noted with concern and note the increase in space, number of spaces has contributed to the additional cost of the garage, but it doesn't account for the whole increase in cost. As a trustee, I'll bring my expertise in construction and legal knowledge about the intricacies of complex projects like the parking deck to ensure that the village gets the deck constructed on time, at or under budget, and to a level of quality that we should expect. Lastly, I favor looking at parking in the village in a broader sense and perhaps leveraging the fact of the deck's construction to try to work with Metra to make some changes to the train schedule to better serve our commuters in town. Metra's service performance in the last several months has been inexcusable. As a trustee, I will continue dialogue I've already begun with Congressman Lipinski and follow through with some ideas that he's discussed with me on ways to bring about significant improvements in the service that Metra provides. Using the deck, leveraging it to try to improve the quality of the schedule and the number of trains will be a priority for me if elected to office.
Thank you, Laurel. Be sure to turn your mic off if you would, Bill.
In terms of how the parking deck should be used, I agree that employee parking should be not only encouraged but required. It's not a long walk. Consider the city of Chicago. Our town is so small. The parking deck is within 1, 2, at the most 3 blocks of any destination in town. If you parked that close to your destination in Chicago, you would feel like you had rock star parking. So I think a little perspective on our parking frustration is appropriate, and having that be employee parking is a great use for it. Additionally, the valet parking that functions to support the restaurants could use spaces there. If after a period of time and observation there are spaces that are unused, we could sell those for commuter parking and have that be a small revenue generator for the village. I think also there probably should be some shopper spaces, just as a backup in case there's a special event going on in Hinsdale and all the street spaces are full. It would be nice for shoppers to be able to be in the deck also.
Thank you. And to our fourth question, what opportunities, if any, do you see for sharing services with other municipalities? Scott, we'll start with you.
So currently, our village has an incredible breadth of services which they provide. Actually, I see 2 services which have potential. One of which is our library. Our library is a resource which, in my view, and by many accounts, is really emblematic of what this village is all about. Over the last several years, we have gone through some dramatic changes where we have gone from a library book-based library to a technology-based library. This type of service is something which is not only transferable within our village, but something that's transferable across many municipalities, and something where having the idea of shared services, which already takes place to a certain extent because we do shared libraries, but we're also in a situation where we can expand the breadth of this opportunity and potentially encourage economic development within the library and to derive benefits as a result. Another one is a potential is with the swimming pool. The swimming pool has been, I was chairman of the Park and Recreation and also a commissioner for many years. And the pool was continually one of these assets within the village that was at times problematic. A pool is expensive, but it's also a resource within the village, which is something which is unique to us. I think having an opportunity to share that with other towns where we can share the costs will be something that will benefit us all, but will also ensure that we can keep a pool within our town. Bill?
Among the shared services that I think is most important to explore and exploit really to the greatest extent we can is in law enforcement. I served for 4+ years as an assistant Cook County State's Attorney. a criminal prosecutor on the front lines of keeping Cook County safe. And I know from that experience and conversations I've had in the years since with police officers, including with Chief King earlier this week, that one of the most important tools when it comes to fighting crime in this day and age is information. Information about people that commit crimes that can be aggregated and shared from one town to the next, from one county to the next. Having that information timely, complete, and relevant to the activities of our law enforcement officers is paramount to keeping our communities safe. And to me, there's no more important shared service than the information that our police can share with one another to make sure that criminals that would prey on the citizens of our town cannot do so.
Laurel?
Well, I think a number of resources can be shared, and many of those agreements are in place and should continue to be fostered and improved upon. I can think of an impressive array of fire trucks that arrived in our village. I believe it was last spring. There was a house at 6th and Oak that had caught fire, and there were fire trucks from 10 different surrounding towns. It was absolutely unbelievable. And the types of equipment that they sent, not only ambulances, but snack stations for all of the firefighters who were there, and ladder trucks, and you get the idea. That was incredible and really impressive. So that gave me confidence that we have a good system of information sharing in place with regard to fire, and that should definitely continue. Also with police, I know that we are part of a municipal service which shares dispatch costs between towns, and so that is a good way for cost sharing to go on. I agree with what candidate Cotter said, that information is absolutely critical in terms of law enforcement, and those programs that are in place should continue. Thank you.
Going last is tough because everyone takes all the good answers. You know, the Village Board is already doing this. Several years ago, the Village of Hinsdale had its own 911 center. The current board shut that down and expanded it with DuPay, something called DuCom. Now we shared services with that, and a cost savings of several $100,000 a year. As Ms. Haarlow noted, we do share services with police and fire. During the shooting out in Aurora, several of our policemen went out to help on that day, and as she noted with the fire on 6th and Oak Street, we had 10 fire departments there. I wouldn't expect any of the other candidates up here to understand this, and I'm not going to get into the details, but as chair of the Zoning and Public Safety, we are sharing data. I'm not going to get into the details because this is public safety. You don't want to give information out to the criminals, but we are sharing significant amounts of data. And I put our Village of Hinsdale, spoken directly by Chief King, who says that he has all of the financial resources he needs in order to fight crime here. We're sharing data not only with the state's attorney office, but also data with other law enforcement agencies. For example, several weeks ago, our police department sat outside of the Verizon store. There was data that was shared saying that there were a number of criminals robbing the Verizon store in various surrounding communities. Our policemen sat out there and waited for them. That's an example of how we're sharing data in order to better protect our citizens.
Thank you. Final question from me. What should the village's priorities be regarding commercial development in the near future? Bill, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Ben. It's hard to say from one case to the next, or from one parcel to the next, what should be prioritized. As a member of the Board of Trustees, I'll not come to it with any set agenda about pet projects or what should be done. Instead, I would be in favor of revisiting the effort from about a dozen years ago that members of our community undertook to develop a forward-looking strategic plan, taking into account about a dozen points of emphasis within the village to focus on for the betterment of the village. and in accordance with that plan, would seek out opportunities to undertake developments or encourage developments consistent with that plan for the betterment of the village and in line with the character and unique charm. Now, I'm not unmindful of the fact that tax proceeds from developments are critical. They're a lifeblood to the village. So doing that and pursuing those opportunities, for example, if the Institute of Basic Life Principles on the heavily trafficked Ogden Avenue corridor would be something that I would look at. I'd engage developers in dialogue to pick their brain, to get a sense about what types of things might work there, but certainly not give them carte blanche to do whatever they want or build whatever they want within this village.
Laurel?
I think that priorities for Hinsdale regarding commercial development should be to very carefully manage any new commercial development coming in. Maintaining the vitality of the Ogden Avenue corridor is critical. As businesses there change, it would behoove the village board and the village staff to look at what kinds of new businesses could come in that really fit that area. We have a couple of car dealerships. We know that those are some of the largest tax revenue generators available. I don't know if more car dealerships would be successful there, given the number that exist further west on Ogden Avenue, but that would certainly be something to look at. Buffer zones around our historic downtown should be maintained and strengthened so that commercial development opportunities that happen in Hinsdale, that come up right in downtown, do not threaten the historic character or the charm of our village, because that in and of itself is a commercial asset. Regarding the Institute for Basic Life Principles property, I think, I've just run out of time. Thank you.
Luke?
Commercial development. As chair of zoning and public safety, there are three things I've been proud of as we chaired that. Number one is the development of 55th and County Line Road. That is age targeted, so when you move out, when your kids leave and you want to downsize, you can go in there. Priority number one for that, it's age targeted. It won't put a stress on our school system. Number two was the Amlings property. We have a low density school going in along Ogden Avenue, and then 8 code compliant homes that will go behind that. To me, that is a win-win for Ogden Avenue, and it is a win-win for our village. And then lastly, the Land Rover Jaguar dealership. The development of that property, the current board kept that in place when they wanted to move to Clarendon Hills or Westmont. We kept our tax revenue in place, and we've made it in a position so that the village's tax revenue will increase in the future. I expect that to be the number one sales generator 10 to 15 years down the road. As far as current properties, IBLP is a big one. My state on that is we have to look at it. We have to develop that into a low density which will not stress our schools. Everyone knows the problems with our schools right now. We cannot overflood schools with more students. Also, I would point out, one of my opponents here tonight on his website actually is in favor of transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development is mid-rises in the downtown district so that people can go to commute back and forth to Chicago. Again, I'm not in favor of that because transit-oriented development overcrowds our schools. The math does not work.
Scott?
So commercial development has two facets to it. It involves business development, and it involves facility development. With business development, it's the type of business that we have to pay attention to. Right now, in our village, we have, to a degree, a saturation of service-oriented businesses. These businesses, by and large, do not contribute to the sales tax revenue of this town. We need to take a hard look at the businesses that are coming into the village. I believe right now, and this is no slight to realtors or banks, but I think that there is a moratorium right now on those types of businesses that can come into our village simply because They occupy space. We appreciate that they're tenants, but at the same time, they're not providing revenue, which is allowing this village to obtain the necessary revenue, which in order to sustain itself. The second aspect, facility development, has to do with density. If we're going to allow building within our community, we have to be very focused on the type of density which it's going to create. Density has a couple different attributes, but one of which is, just as Luke was citing, is the fact that if we have a facility that comes in that's multi-development or whatever in terms of our multi-unit development, we have to be very focused on what the impact of the school will be. It's something that will always haunt us if we don't pay attention to it. And so therefore, as a trustee, I would be very focused on business development, facility development, to make sure it's consistent with the objectives of our town.
Bill? Oh, I'm sorry, you led that one. Maybe they'll get a new moderator next time. All in favor, say aye. No one handed me questions, and we're out of time for the village board debate. So, is that right, Pam?
I made a couple sweeps and I didn't see any, so.
Let's hear a round of applause.
Closing.
Like I said, another moderator because there are closing remarks that I forgot. You know what? I can't. We're 7:45 and the next debate starts, so I will try to go faster next time. Let's do closing remarks real quickly. We'll start with Laurel. Yep.
I look forward to serving the Village of Hinsdale as a trustee. I have an extensive record of volunteerism, both for the village and for nonprofit organizations. For the village, I served on the Design Review Commission, which assembled and wrote the village's non-binding design guidelines. I also served on one of the solution exploration groups dedicated to beautifying Hinsdale as a follow-up to the 2006 survey of the village. Nonprofit organizations I've served include the Hinsdale Historical Society Women's Board, of which I was the inaugural president, Wellness House, Grace Church, AYSO and IGLA, Monroe and CHMS PTOs, and Hinsdale Juniors. All of these offered a great way to get to know people as well as work to better our community. Volunteerism has profoundly influenced Hinsdale. It is the way we support each other as neighbors and fellow residents. Visible examples of its impact include our gorgeous memorial building, which houses our village government and library. The building and its Victory of Hinsdale statue in the library were financed with funds raised by volunteers. Even more important are our volunteer organizations such as the Community House, Wellness House, Hinsdale Community Service, Youth Sports, School PTOs. The list is endless. The quality of Hinsdale's community directly corresponds to the level of volunteerism found here. By my reading, it is very high.
I have to stop you right there. Your time's up, Laurel.
And I'm proud to call myself a member of such a community.
Way to sneak it in. Excellent. Luke, go ahead.
I will go quickly. My track record as a trustee and a community volunteer makes me best suited for this position. For the past 9 years, my community service has been focused on the village. 5 years as a plan commissioner and the past 4 years as trustee, including chairperson of public safety and zoning. My time on the board has been results-oriented, including leading the village's fight against stereogenics, smart development of large tracts of land which will create a larger tax base, keeping Land Rover Jaguar in Hinsdale which will expand our tax base, and ensuring the Hinsdale Police Force has resources to do their job, as was the case with the arrest of the Bradlee robbery. Going forward, I plan to eliminate parking meters and pay boxes in downtown Hinsdale, aggressively fight the tollway authority. Our strategy here needs to be aggressiveness. We cannot let them take advantage of us. Oppose any type of development that will overcrowd our schools, and continue to ensure that public safety is priority number one. As we have done, criminals will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Bad actors such as stereogenics will be pursued aggressively. I'd be honored to receive your vote and serve you for another 4 years.
Thank you, Scott.
So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I've lived here a very long time. My family, my wife and I have had the privilege of raising our children here. In addition to making an investment in a home, we also made an investment in the community. We also took time out of our daily lives to make sure that our community was a better place. My wife served as a room mom for multiple years. I served as a Hinsdale Little League coach. Out of that, we developed relationships. I was part of an effort to try to save the Hinsdale Theater. Although that was not a successful effort, it was one of the things that allowed me to become exposed to other attributes of the village. I was treasurer of the Hinsdale Village Caucus for 2 contested election cycles. I also served as a commissioner with Hinsdale Parks and Recreation Committee, and ultimately was their chair. I was then ultimately asked to be a trustee on an interim basis to get the full experience of exactly what's involved. This town is about volunteerism. It means you show up. And being in this situation means that you have an obligation to serve those people that have put their trust in you. If you provide me with your vote, if you are giving me that privilege, I promise to serve you, and I hope you vote on April 2, you vote for number 2.
So I certainly do not have the years of living in this town that the other folks sitting up here do. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay to look at things from a different perspective. It's okay to have a different perspective. Because you know what? There are a lot of people like me that have moved to this town with the hope and expectation of a great life for their family. And this is a great town. Make no mistake about it. But there's a lot that I can do at this time to make the town even better. I'm a proponent of working, whether it's with 181 or with the tollway, to achieve positive outcomes for the town. Calling people liars, engaging in litigation, spending money on those types of things is not productive of any type of positive outcome. I'll be a solutions-oriented trustee, working to protect this village's interests and promote the services that we can expect from the DEC, from Metra, improving their quality of service, and making sure that we hold the tollway accountable as it expands into our backyards in the coming years. Leveraging the relationships that I have in agencies of local government, I know that I can be a strong advocate for this town and ensure great outcomes for its residents. Vote number 1 on election day. Thank you.
And now let's give our candidates another round of applause.